Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Eastern Shore Talk, your podcast for all things self care movies. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. We're glad to have you. This is episode 57. I'm Jay Watson.
And I'm Cathy Castle. And we're pleased to introduce a guest today. We have with us Cathy Dilley. And Cathy is, I'm proud to say, a colleague of mine. And currently, she is the CEO of Midshore Behavioral Health. And when I refer to Midshore Behavioral Health, which is headquartered in Easton, but advocates, I'll say, for 5 counties on the shore: Kent, Queen Anne, Talbot, Caroline, Dorchester. And Cathy is a social worker herself, a LCSWC, a licensed social worker, just like I am. And she has a lot of experience over the years, and I'll let her get into that. But um, basically, an agency that she works for, I would call it a local behavioral health authority. So, in the state of Maryland, where that we Channel Marker does community behavioral health work, and we're under the state, we're licensed under the state, but Cathy's group is our local connection to the higher authority, and nicely kind of advocates for the shore and fills the gaps and hears all of our complaints and stressors, and she's got a big job, so I'm going to let her do a much better job than I did about what her role is there. So go ahead and tell us what you do at Midshore, Cathy.
Okay, sure. Well, good evening. Thank you both for having me. This is a real pleasure to be in this space with you. I know, Cathy, this is something you've been doing for quite some time now, right?
Well, we're a year at the podcast, right, Jay?
Yep, just barely a year old. Yep.
Probably a year and a half trying to do this Eastern Shore Talk.
I love it. So thank you both for having me. So It's a real gift to be here. As Cathy said, my name is Cathy Dilley, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Executive Officer at Midshore Behavioral Health. And for those of you who aren't aware, like Cathy so graciously introduced the organization, Midshore Behavioral Health actually has been established since 1992. We are a regional core service agency and partial local behavioral health authority for a couple counties here in the Midshore region. So we represent Caroline, Dorchester, Kent, Queen Anne's, and Talbot counties. We are nonprofit in structure. So there's 2 things that make our organization very unique: that we are the only regional core service agency in the state of Maryland left. There used to be a couple pockets over the years that were regional in structure, mostly in rural communities. But we are the only regional local authority structure left. But I don't think that minimizes the impact that we have. But I think many of you who know just midshore kind of structures, we do like to do a lot of things collectively. And we have a lot of representation for our behavioral health provider network that are in multiple counties of the 5 counties here in the region. We do local behavioral health systems management. Our primary responsibility that is given to us at the pleasure of the Secretary of Health, Maryland Department of Health, under the Behavioral Health Administration, is really making sure that we're looking at quality and addressing access and gaps in services to our behavioral health service provider network. We also seek out any opportunity when there may be a service line that's not being met, or just a need that's emerging in the community. So a lot of the services and resources that are here in the Midshore region are grant funded. And Midshore Behavioral Health is usually the primary applicant and the procuring entity and the overseeing program developer for a lot of really non-traditional behavioral health services, crisis services, safe stations, substance use services. We have a whole array of things that would not fall within a traditional fee-for-service structure. And that's where I really think we're very unique, is that we have this relationship and oversight with our providers like Cathy, And then we have a whole group of organizations represented that are providing services that are touching community members that are a little bit non-traditional in how they're structured. So that allows us to be creative and really, I think, impactful in different ways. We also like to be an entity that brings education and trainings into the region, as well as use our voice and our nonprofit structure to also be advocates and getting out there and really identifying and lifting up the voices of those providers as well as community members that really aren't in a position to have representation politically and with our delegation to make their needs known. So we do work very tirelessly to be that advocacy entity as well. One of our obviously any role that has systems management involved and quality monitoring, we are involved if things aren't going well, as well as when they do. We love to celebrate wins for providers, as well as be that resource to support our provider network if they're having an issue. But sometimes we do have instances where we have to get involved if something's not going well in an organization, really step in and try to be part of a solution to support the organization and to support the clients you're serving. We do work very closely with our behavioral health administration, monitoring changes that are happening in the state, as well as changes that are happening at the federal level. So as you can imagine, we've been really busy in that space recently, especially since yesterday session closed, our 2025 session. But we're also in the midst of just a very kind of evolving and different federal climate right now that will potentially be impacting some of the resources coming into the region. So that's where we're hyper focused right now on just preparing and making sure that we're doing what we can to sustain everything that we do have in terms of resources right now in the region. So it's a heavy lift, but I can't do it by myself. We have a wonderful team here at Midshore Behavioral Health. We have 32 team members at the organization, and that's just remarkable. I joined Midshore Behavioral Health in the very early part of 2016, and I want to say we had 13 team members when I joined, and we've grown tremendously. I think in scope of work, as well as the resources that we're bringing in fiscally, and obviously growing with the growing needs of mental health and behavioral health services. So we are trying to keep up with making sure that we can be as impactful as an organization serving the 5 counties.
So I'm going to stay in the lane of the organization first, but we do want to talk more about you and your experience.
Oh, sure.
But I want to stick with the agency for a minute, or the organization. I think something that people probably don't understand is that the work that we all do in the community, and we call it community behavioral health, meaning anything to do with mental health or substance disorders in the community. Organizations that are in the community, not institutions like hospitals, although we all work with hospitals. But I think that just as complicated as everyone knows mental health services are, like, who do you call to get in, and what if you can't pay for it? I mean, there's a lot of things on the client or consumer end that are difficult, but it is also very difficult, I would say, on the provider end. And I've worked in it for a very long time. Katie has worked in it for a very long time. But it's truly, I want to say, it is a labor of love, because on the shore, on the Eastern Shore, I mean, we all know what the complications are. The Eastern Shore of Maryland, transportation is not readily available. It's not like somebody can just go pick up a city bus and go wherever they want. So transportation is a barrier for people to get to where they need to go. Sometimes internet is a barrier. If someone needs to be seen but can't get there, and they need to partake in a telehealth visit, which I guess thankfully COVID, that's one good thing COVID gave to us. Maybe the only good thing COVID gave to us was that in our business we could, use technology a little more creatively. But it's a hard business to be in. It's hard to recruit and train staff. We're not the highest paid field in the universe, and we're dealing with complex situations for people, often just heart wrenching. Believe it or not, there's a big homeless crisis on the shore. I was really blind to it. I'm going to be honest, even though I've lived here for my entire life. There is so many um, sad stories of people not having a place to live and even find meals. So, you know, Katie and her crew have a really hard job, in my opinion, of herding all of us, cattle or cats, whatever we are, herding us all as we're all in our own individual lanes trying to focus on our individual organizations. But there's so much more need than resources. And I really respect you, Katie. I don't know how you go home at night and are like, wow, maybe a Caribbean island making things out of coconuts could be the answer to wellness and stress free. But yeah, so I appreciate the advocacy that you personally do for everyone, that your organization does, because it's a puzzle. Everybody is important. Each piece is
Absolutely.
interlocking and important for the bigger picture. So
Thank you,
thank you
Cathy.
all for what you do.
One thing that I didn't touch on, and I appreciate you acknowledging the individuals that are unhoused or homeless in our community. That Midshore Behavioral Health, in addition to having our real finger on the pulse of mental health and substance use service needs and what's going on in that space in the region, we also are the regional continuum of care for the 5 counties. So the continuum of care is a responsible entity that does a very similar function as a local behavioral health authority, but for homeless services. So ensuring quality, convening providers, addressing needs, being responsible for getting out there and doing our annual point in time surveying to illuminate, the population. How many folks are we talking about here in our jurisdiction? And to also do a very similar function with case management, housing placement, supporting individuals entering into either sheltering locations or permanent supported housing, and also advocating for our homeless service providers and working with various partners in the community to make sure that we're addressing where those needs and barriers are. Because that is a population that I will say has really become more, not that they haven't been in our jurisdiction, obviously. I mean, it's not something that's unusual, but that I think is a growing population that is in high need. And, the availability of affordable housing in our region is becoming much harder to find.
Long wait lists.
Long wait lists, all the things you touched on in terms of transportation barriers and accessibility and, um, the complexity of individuals that find themselves in situations without shelter. There's a lot that can go into that story, and it's not an easy fix. And those are individuals that I feel very compassionate around recognizing self-determination in that process and how we support that and nurture that and extend resources and join them to the extent that that community will let us in, and it can be challenging. So we do have 3 team members here at Midshore that are working specifically and leading the continuum of care and really are champions, working with our service providers. And this is a difficult time. I think on the health and human services side of things, as well as our housing and urban development resources are there's a lot of question marks and unknown in those spaces. So the fear of losing any access to those resources to support the great services that we've brought up here in the region is real. So we're working to do our best to support providers that are reliant on those dollars.
I will say that one more thing, and then Jay, you can chime in. Midshore has a really great resource guide. They do it every year. They update it every year. It's a lot of information in it. I don't think there's anything in there. I don't think there's anything left out of this resource guide, and it's certainly on their website, and you can access it, their Midshore Behavioral Health website. But it's their resource guide, and has everybody in it that does services. It has shelters, housing. It has just about anything anyone would have a question about in our field. I think that's a great job. They do it every year. And
Oh, well, thank you. And every year, we've tried to, like we do in our community planning process, and our needs assessment process, we really try to get a temperature on what is missing and where we're seeing emerging needs come up in terms of we take help calls here at Midshore. And if we're seeing a certain trend, let's say it's around access to recovery housing or transportation to access substance use treatment. Those are elements of the resource guide that historically weren't always there, that we've tried to bake in, as the resource itself grows year over year. And our providers are just tremendous because you impact and influence and inform that process. So it's a real mutual kind of resource, if you will, a living document. So I know folks are eager when we make updates. One of our recent goals is to try to not make that just an annual process, but if something new,
make it live.
Make it live. And so there's no kind of blip on the radar of what's in that resource guide. But we've done a lot of work around making it user friendly because, as we know, one of our biggest challenges is getting folks aware that we even exist. How do we make sure folks know that we're here to help, that we're free, but there's no charge to contact us. There's no fee to have that added layer of support. We have behavioral health coordinators that are dedicated to the entire lifespan, starting with child and adolescent all the way up to our older adult and aging populations. We have folks that have expertise and real passion for certain pockets of population in need. I know we're going to touch on some wellness pieces, but we even have a coordinator here that's just dedicated to wellness and recovery exclusively, harm reduction exclusively, peer support. So those are things that have evolved over the years, but the challenge is making sure the community knows how to find us. So opportunities like this really are a gift for Midshore. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share more and answer any questions that you have on.
Well, and the good thing about your organization is sometimes they find channel marker because we're up in the alphabet, we're a C. So they, when they're Googling something, we might come up. But the thing is if somebody has a unique situation, like, oh, I've moved Aunt Helen from Arizona and she's aging and she probably shouldn't live alone. And there's, some heavy depression there, Mitchell's a good entity to call and talk it through with their staff and say, because people don't know what to do. It is just too much. And I feel for the public and for people that are put into situations that they just don't know where to start. So it's not like there's a 1-800, here's all the answers to everything. So, Mitchell is really a good landing place for somebody to call and run a scenario, and then they can figure out what bucket this goes in, or even what agencies to call. So I think it's a really good thing. And your resource guide, another way I use that, it's really it's easy on the eyes, it's colorful, and there's at some points in time I might take page 52 and 53 and I pull it out and I'm handing it out at a presentation I'm doing because they've already done the work. I don't have to recreate that document. You don't have to just throw the whole resource guide, but there might be something in particular that I'm speaking on that I've borrowed from your resource guide.
Oh, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's there for. I hear a lot of times folks will be in like a brainstorming meeting and they'll say, oh, we need to make a new resource guide for this. I'm like, oh, please don't do that. Let us
Yeah.
see if we can take that on.
100%.
So it's really more of a one-stop shop
Yeah.
for the community. But like I said, that challenge is getting that information out in the public. So any opportunity to promote that we're here and that's an available, free, accessible resource, as well as just a phone call away. Because I know we appreciate, language barriers as well as, reading literacy and so forth. So we're here to be in-person support as well, to have those conversations.
So, Katie, I'm always, with every guest we have on, whether they be a mental health professional or a self care provider, I'm always very interested in the story behind the service. So, what was it that got you motivated to begin with in getting into the mental health field?
Well, I think this is a great question. I've been chewing on it ever since we kicked off. So I feel like I've always really had an interest in the field. I did not enter the field of social work. Well, I didn't think I would want to be a social worker. I'll just start there.
I didn't either. That wasn't what I signed up for.
Social work, I didn't, that wasn't necessarily the plan, but I'm so grateful for it. But I'm thinking back even as early as like middle school, I had a guidance counselor ask me if I'd be interested in being like a peer support student in the school, which I thought was, pretty cool opportunity. And so there was a
Maybe
cohort.
that's safety patrol for us.
Well, I started in safety patrol in elementary school. That was definitely
we all had it. We're
very
proud.
very proud safety patrol. And and then in middle school, had that opportunity. I look at that as like really, someone saw, I guess, something in me and wanted to nurture that, which I will forever be grateful for. And so that peer support training, I grew up in Maryland. I grew up on the Western Shore. Used to be a real part of the fabric of what happened in middle schools and high schools. When I was growing up, there was even a conference that was held down in Ocean City every spring where they would bring us all together and teachers would come. And so I just kind of organically fell into that space and it felt like a good fit for me. And for those folks that know me well, I also am a huge camp counselor supporter. I was a counselor for many, many years, nurturing that in my own household with my daughter, going to sleepaway camp and hoping that she follows in my path. But I loved, doing after school support with kids and camps in the summer. And so I've always just had like a real desire to connect with people and try to help and be social and kind of, stable and safe. So in college, I studied psychology. That was very like just comfortable, came naturally.
I did that too. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
Marty and I did psychology first. Our bachelors are in psychology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have my bachelor's in psychology. I had a path that was leading towards a doctoral program. Actually, was really interested in developmental psychology and had moved in the path of kind of heading in that direction. And then I decided that I wasn't sure I wanted to do research the rest of my life or be more academic, right? I think I just enjoy the human connection too much that I didn't see that working for me. Like I didn't feel like it would really satisfy me professionally and just personally. So I know my folks weren't too happy that I took a hard pause and didn't go straight into a graduate school program, but I worked for a few years after I graduated college. I actually went to Tulane University in New Orleans. So I had some really interesting jobs working with the community there. I worked in the public school system. I worked with first generation college students in the New Orleans public schools.
Mm.
Um, I managed a halfway house for individuals coming out of incarceration. I did that for a while. And then I landed in a inpatient psychiatric hospital working on an eating disorder inpatient unit. And I stayed there working for a little over 3 years. And that's where I really fell in love with social work, because most of the clinicians that were on my team, and of course I was just a bachelor level kind of counselor position, but the team and the cohort that I was able to be exposed to in that work environment really turned me on to the idea of becoming a clinical social worker. Because I thought, wow, look, I heard of all the different places and spaces that these clinicians had worked in, and I was just so excited by that. So that's what really led me into getting my master's, um, and I did a lot of medical social work settings for many years. It's a real passion of mine. I love doing hospital work. I love working in really kind of chronic situations with health, as well as emergency department, real crisis oriented services. But I also developed a real passion of working with maternal health. During that time of my career, I was a NICU social worker for several years.
She really
And I, and
does have
I
a lot.
also did hospice care.
Well,
And
you have done the lifespan for sure.
that's what, if anybody ever asks me, I always say I love beginnings and ends. I like the new life stuff and the end stuff, and everything in between is fine, except for child and adolescence is not my strength. So even though I have one living in my household, it's not my strength. That's right. So I really worked. I was in the field for many, many years, and this is my working at Midshore is really my first systems management role as a social worker. But I say this to the team a lot, that I don't think I could do this job without doing all the things I did leading up to it, because you see what works, what doesn't.
You've been it. You've lived it.
I've lived it. I've struggled in trying to navigate it and help fix it on the other side. And now that I'm here, I feel very empowered to try to do my best to really get it right.
Yeah.
So this is a very amazing place to work. It's just, I feel like it's just a gift. It's a lot of work, but it doesn't really feel like work, you know?
Got a good call.
So that's probably more than you wanted to know. That's the whole little journey of Katie moving along the way.
No,
we do a segment called self-care testimonials, and it kind of organically evolved because as Cathy knows, I'm a very analytical and I'm a very why driven person, and I really love the story of what drives people, especially
me too.
the call to serve. What is it about that person that led them to serve in whatever way it is? So, and we've had we started to accumulate so many guests that had a story behind their service of whatever it was, that we just kind of organically came up with this thing, self-care testimonials. And it's basically why I do what I do. It's the story behind the story. And that's become like a really big. It's become my favorite part of what we do is getting to know. Yes, they're teaching whomever's listening about the self-care and wellness of what to do for X, Y, and Z, but they're also talking about here's where it started, and here's my motivation for why I do what I do. And it's very connective for me and for someone who has such a traumatic past, that it's and it's very it's that finding like-minded folks that have their stories may not be the same as mine, but it comes from somewhere for everybody, whether their circumstances are the same or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very it's just very I'm very excited and very intrigued by the story behind the service. It just gets me.
Katie, I don't even know if you know Jay's story, but quickly. He has had a childhood sexual trauma. Him and I have known each other forever, literally,
Over
but
50 years. Yeah.
oh,
Wow.
and we graduated together and have had a really special friendship all along. And he came to me and had this idea. This is really his idea, and
Outstanding.
so I'm like, sure, let's figure this out. So it's been really fun trying to, me coming from a certain place on why I'm doing this, him coming from just such a recovery
Hmm.
story and such hope. So it's been really fun to come together and put it all together and bring other people into our little space and try to maybe share stories and make people feel a little better.
Wow.
And Katie, one of your folks, Alicia Salisbury, was very pivotal in
Hmm.
Hmm.
what we're all doing here. She was the very first person. I was going through a very difficult time in my life at the time, probably 8 or 9 years ago, and I knew she's very specific to the trauma field, so I reached out to her,
Yep.
and we went back and forth for a while, and she was the very first person that ever said to me, "Have you ever thought about using your story to serve in some way?" And like this light bulb just went off, and
Hmm.
it kind of the Eastern Shore Talk entity and various ways that we've kind of grown this thing really came, in no small part from not only Alicia's personal impact on my life, but just her, you know, that motivating thing, that question that have you ever used your story to,
Hmm. Hmm.
thought about doing that, using that to serve. And so, yeah, here we are now, a little over 2 years since I first went to Cathy and said, "Hey, I got this idea." So, yeah, one of your folks was very pivotal in all of this coming to be.
Yeah, we're very grateful to have Alicia on our team. She serves as our forensic mental health program manager. Um, but for many, many years before joining the Midshore team, Alicia also worked very actively, especially in Dorchester County, with a program called TAMAR, which is really a trauma model that can be used with um, many different situations, but it's trauma and it's also sexual trauma kind of specific, and men and women. But her niche in the detention centers down in Dorchester was working with our women, and she's very gifted in that trauma work,
Passionate. I love
and
it.
also has a huge passion for working in the criminal justice space. And so we're grateful to have her in that capacity here. And we have a lovely team member, Mary B. Craft, who's our forensic mental health case manager. So they're our team, which is actually Mitchell is the only local authority in the state of Maryland that has this sort of program embedded into a local authority. And we have a couple of counties that we've been working with just within the last couple of months to try to get them in this position where they could look to kind of bring up a program like this in their own local
Oh,
authority.
wow.
So we've got a couple counties up in the northern part of the state and the southern part of the state that are considering bringing that on. So it's something that's more universal. I think that's important in systems work that if I leave um, this area of the state, if I'm, let's say I'm living in Dorchester and I go over to, Prince George's County and I need help, that I can feel comfortable navigating that space because of what I've learned living here. And that's where there's still a struggle because there's a lot of variability on how it looks depending on the county. So I know that's work happening at the state level, but that forensic program I think would be wonderful to have just across the board. So thank you for bringing up Alicia. And yes,
Mm.
she's really very gifted.
So, Katie, what do you guys have going on? Any projects? Any
Lots, right?
Oh
anything
yeah.
that you would
So
like to talk about?
before I move on from the criminal justice space, I will just put a little plug in. We're doing a lot of work in that space. Teaming up with counties here in the Midshore to help support. We have a couple counties that are still working to really build up and establish their problem solving courts. So those are courts that are really in place to help individuals that have become involved with the criminal justice system, demonstrate commitment to treatment and their utilization of their and working their recovery program to move through that circumstance in their life, to really use it as a pivoting point and not a place of punishment, right? So Alicia and Mary, they're busy. They're out in all the counties, in that space, and like I said, in those counties that are still kind of bringing up that resource, we're working with those more closely to help support that model. But we have a really exciting opportunity that's coming up in the next few weeks. The state has, just in the last couple of years, become energized around a model that we've been implementing here for a little over 11 years on the Midshore, which is the sequential intercept mapping model. So that, for those who don't know, the sequential intercept map and model is there are 6 intercepts of how individuals move either from the community through the criminal justice system and then back reintegrated into their community space. And the model is intended to help community partners across the spectrum of services, from law enforcement to treatment to crisis services to shelters, transportation. I mean, get everybody at the table to say, well, number one, how can we work to divert individuals from ever entering the criminal justice system? But number two, for those that do, how can we serve them better? That it's our responsibility truly to be committed to making sure that resources for recovery and support are kicked off from the beginning to the best that we can. So Midshore has been mapping our resources, not just in the Midshore. We've really kind of stretched over the last few years with the model and have brought partners from all across the shore to be a part of this conversation. But a similar process is now happening at the state level. So a handful of local leadership and Midshore team members. We've got leadership in the district and the circuit court spaces. We have law enforcement leadership, emergency management leadership, have been kind of called upon to participate in a full statewide summit where we're going to unpack what does the state look like in terms of intercepts. And we're going to be able to break out by jurisdictions and do that at a statewide level, which is a heavy lifting project to organize. But we're really excited to be at that table because we've done this for so long, and it makes sense to us. The model it works. It really is a tool to help illuminate where we're, where we're missing and where we're failing in serving the community. And what are the new needs? How are folks showing up now? I think people are really hurting, and the criminal justice system a lot of times can just be an unfortunate circumstance. But how do we turn that into an opportunity? So,
and I think too,
we're excited about that. We're excited.
I would just say, I think that maybe, I don't know if it's just because we're in a smaller environment, but hopefully it's building everywhere, like you said. But if, like, for example, if someone comes into our crisis services, which is a very short term diversion from hospitalization or step down, but I'm seeing how people are working together, and it really is nice. Like, if the police are involved, they're involved in different trainings to understand what a mental health crisis or substance crisis may look like for people, and the way that the police are dealing with those individuals are very kind, and they're considering all that's going on with this person and the trauma that may be going on. And I had to deal with a situation a couple weeks ago, and it was another agency, it was law enforcement, it was us, and we were all just working together around this individual. And it was nice, because that's the way you want it to be. We shouldn't all just work in silos. We're all helping touch people's lives and get them out of crisis.
So you said it perfectly, that silo is something that organizations like ours really are trying to break down. So having that sequential intercept model meeting, we do that annually. The beginning of November is a nice opportunity to reconnect and re-energize in that space, to continue to partner. We're also in spring is a very exciting time, training and
Busy.
mental health awareness and lots of good stuff happening. But Midshore is getting ready to host our 14th annual Across the Lifespan conference. And this year we have themes for the day. It's a full day training that's free. We open it up to our whole network here in the region. We have folks that even travel from the lower shore to come, Cecil County, across the bridge. But we host a 1 day conference. But before leading up to the actual day of the conference, there's a lot of work that goes into that space. So we really try to reflect on what we're seeing as needs in either the provider space or how folks in the community are showing up. Like where do we think we need to focus our energy to make sure that we're having conversations and providing opportunities to learn and stretch and connect around what's really kind of the high need or hot topic right now. So we deliberate as a team to come up with the area of focus. So this year, which is really complementary to the work you all are doing here in this space, our focus is wellness, promotion, and preventative measures.
We like it, right?
Yeah. And so it's a proactive approach to fostering open dialogue and harm reduction. So we're looking at the whole wellness spectrum, prevention, we're looking at suicide prevention, and we're also spending quite a bit of time folding in the value and resource and strength of the harm reduction philosophies and really how those can be implemented into many different spaces that we really haven't touched. So trying to just infuse that energy around connecting with wellness as really the driving force of how we do our work. So we're excited about that. That's coming up on April 25th. So it's fast approaching.
And it's full, but I do have a spot, so I'm so happy.
Yes. It's full.
What I think is exciting though, Katie, is, you and I both live in the chronic space, people that have been sick for a long time and very ill. But what I love about the wellness side of it is, and even in the chronic space, this wellness stuff is a good train to be on because it's so positive and there's so many different alternative type of therapies that people can choose. Jay and I have had so many different talented people on this podcast, whether it's the night we learned about acupuncture and how acupuncture on the ear helps, with substance cravings, or I mean, the obvious massage and Reiki, are so healing. And we've talked about the grief recovery model for people that, are trying to deal with loss. And there's just so much out there that's exciting and hopeful. And, we try to tie mental health and physical health and spiritual health, all of it all together, to put it together to make a really happy person. We try every week, whether we're going to talk about food or exercise or sleep or whatever. Wellness is just exciting to me.
Well, speaking of that, Cathy, that we're going to bring it all together in September.
Yeah.
I don't know if Alicia's told you, Katie, but we have put together what we're calling the Eastern Shore Self-Care Expo.
Oh, very nice.
For September 13th out at the Talbot County Community Center. Yeah, and anybody who's in the self-care, wellness, and mental health, any of those fields is we're going to showcase that to the community. And we're hoping it's going to be an ongoing thing from, moving forward and kind of grow and evolve. And, this is our first shot at it. We've kind of...
Oh, wonderful.
I just kind of put feelers out a few months ago and just to see, and was blown away at the response. And, yeah, we're going to fill the space that we've rented out there. And, Yeah, Kathy's kind of named a few. But I mean, you name it, we've got folks from yoga teachers to clinicians to you know massage and Reiki and all
You
kind
name
of different things. People that make that are that sell um, sub not substances. What's the word I'm looking for? Oh,
I wish I could read your mind right now. I can't.
people make homemade soaps and homemade candles
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
aromatherapy and
Essential
sound
oil
therapy.
kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of something that's kind of been in the back of my mind for
yeah.
many years, and it's kind of
And I think the consistent thing that we talk about here on the podcast even is regardless of what's going on in somebody's life or all the different kind of interventions that are out there, it's practice. It's literally practice, and when
Yep.
we're all down in the rabbit hole, you got to get out of the rabbit hole and
Yep.
find out what calms you,
Mhm.
what centers you,
Mhm.
and it's just so important to
Yeah.
get that
The
message across to
the
people.
ritual of committing to whatever works for you is so critical because when you get in that rhythm, it can be really,
Because
really
life,
amazing.
as we
Really amazing.
as we
Mhm.
can tell, it's not getting easier. So we got to
No,
do a better job at,
that's right.
there are
self-regulating.
more sources of anxiety now because of social media than there's ever been.
Oh my,
Yeah.
I know. It's really
Oh my home phone. It never rings.
home.
Goodness. I'm the only person in the world that still has a home line.
No, I have a home line, but I think it just came with the package from the home service. But it's always good to have an emergency. You never know.
And I
Uh,
will say too, talking about our partnership, Midshore Behavioral Health, we all do this together, the Midshore Suicide Coalition, where we're
mhm,
trying to bring different providers and individuals together on a 5 county
mhm.
level to what's everyone doing for suicide prevention, and there's a huge wellness component to that. What are we doing to reach out to our fellow neighbors and making sure they're okay,
Mhm,
and helping people to get through some tough times and lending them a hand to literally get out of that hole.
mhm,
So
mhm.
that's pretty exciting, and we're actually going to bring Kevin Hines back
Yes.
to the area. Kevin is, you got to hear him, Jay, right? Kevin is an
Yep.
international speaker. He jumped the Golden Gate Bridge in 2000 and survived. And he is such a great storyteller. And, he's just light. He's hope for people. He's such
Mhm.
a good speaker. So we're bringing him to Dorchester in June for a free event to the community.
It's going to be really outstanding.
Yeah, so we're excited about that.
Yeah, and I am very grateful for Cathy, your leadership in the Suicide Coalition space and willingness to step
Thank
in
you.
and take that on. And we're
Heavy.
getting our kind of foundational pieces set up, and but still doing great work in the community along the way. So
Yeah.
I think it's been a really um, meaningful group to bring together. I know that we have
Mhm.
learned from our lower shore, uh, you know, connections and peers down there, working that have been really supporting that space for a long time, um, and this is overdue. So it's
Absolutely.
nice. It's really nice to have the resource.
Yeah.
And one thing that we do, kind of as an offshoot of that, that I
Mhm.
kind of spearheaded back in the throes of COVID was we Midshore. We are the convener of the Bay Bridge
Oh,
Partnership.
yes.
So we ever since August of 2020, there is a group that has grown and evolved, very similar, like kind of based on need and emerging trends and so forth. But there's some kind of founding members, if you will, that come together every every other month. We meet. We're actually meeting tomorrow.
Oh,
Yeah,
yay. Good.
yeah. to talk about, trends that we're seeing, not just on the bridge. It's gotten a lot bigger than that, where we're looking at just crisis hotspots, if you will, across the state. We've been a group that's been a resource to help inform, how 988 materials get out into the community, and how do we help inform community members of how to get a hold of crisis response and how to get help that's not 911. And really, we were able to bring Kevin Hines actually to the shore out of this work of the Bay Bridge Partnership, identifying during the heat of COVID how to get a virtual space to connect and learn. So we're
And
very
that material is
grateful.
still available on your website on Mitchell Behavioral Health and on Channel Marker. We have a series of videos that Kevin made.
Called
And
The Art of Wellness.
yeah, the art of wellness, and it's based on demographics too. We have one on veterans and aging and
Men.
men. Yeah. So yes, I'm glad you brought that up. That bridge initiative. That's a worrisome topic, that bridge. And I'm glad that group is still together and expanding out. There's some smart people on that group.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been really. We've actually, kind of used the model and taken the show on the road, if you will. Spoken at a few national conferences just on how to think like outside of the box, like really be non-traditional. And we're so fixed, I think, on, well, that's not my county, or the state line stops here, or this happens on one or the other side. And just realizing that it's okay to color outside the lines to make sure you're helping folks, that the outcome of that is well worth it. And the bridge has been really symbolic to look at how we can kind of reshape just meeting folks where they are, and also taking care of ourselves, because the work that happens in crisis response and for those individuals responding to that, I mean, we sort of try to make it a mutual aid and reinforce the need to take care of ourselves, because it's really, those are some pretty hard situations to intervene with. And that, that vicarious trauma work, is so critical, to make sure that we're kind of lifting that up in one another, in the practitioner and the first responder spaces. We got to really make time to have space and circles to feel okay to not be okay, just acknowledge that it's tough.
Yeah, and I've been glad lately too. There's a lot more coming for first responders. Jay, we've had Vance Rowe on the podcast. Even Vance has been very instrumental in bringing a program called Struggle Well across the state. He's going to in June do a 2-day program with our mobile crisis provider, Sante, and the Cambridge Police Department to give a Struggle Well 2-day training to first responders. And we're also going to probably repeat that here in Talbot, Caroline counties. But it's giving them ways, because they do deal with trauma all the time. They go from one bad experience to another, and we got to let them process and figure out how to get past some of their own stuff, because if not, then they're engaging in harmful, rather it's turning to substance use or not dealing with it at all, and they're just completely stressed and anxious themselves. So I'm glad we're doing some work with first responders. Marty does some mental health check-ins with several police departments, and I know others do that as well. But we're trying to keep an eye on these first responders, and I'm sure there's more that we need to expand to, even thinking about
definitely
emergency department workers. And there's just a lot of people that are dealing with trauma that feel it themselves.
Well, another exciting thing that we're looking forward to, and we have brought this sort of celebration and acknowledgement into the culture of our Midshore and Eastern Shore providers, is in May, We have we host what's called the Caliber Awards,
Mm.
and that's also very unique to what we do here in the region, is using that space to annually acknowledge just outstanding work in the provider space, the peer support space, individuals that have um, reflected just outstanding work with empowerment of consumers. Um, we have, several awards over the years that have kind of grown out of our work groups at Mitchell Behavioral Health. We have a lot of kind of niche meetings for age groups and need. Our roundtable on homelessness, we acknowledge sort of a champion in that space. So we're going to be hosting that in May, which is exciting. And it's always just,
Big. That's big. That's a big. There's a lot of people there.
there's a lot of people, yes, yes. So it's really a coveted experience to be a recipient of that, and even just the opportunity to be in that space to just celebrate one another. I think it's really important that we do that.
I agree.
Awesome.
We're just a little busy. We also have our fiscal year 26 plan due this Friday. So I told Cathy, I'm like, forgive me if I'm a little fatigued. We've been having some long days, long nights, staying up, trying to put the finishing touches on, planning for the future. And as you can imagine, when you don't know what it all is going to look like, even more now than probably ever before, um, it's a challenging process, but we're plugging through and looking forward to getting that off the plate at the end of the week. But we had a lovely opportunity to present our goals and our objectives and strategies last week to all of our regional advisory groups and governance bodies. So that was great. That was last Thursday. So really, really, impressive engagement just with the investment, I think, in the community right here with the work. So it's
very good.
Great.
So before we get out of here, let's switch gears for just a few minutes and talk a little bit about what we've been watching lately. So, Katie, anything you've been watching lately?
She doesn't sound like she's watching anything.
This is a funny question.
It sounds like you have any time to watch it.
I don't really I don't have a lot of time to watch. I try. Usually I kind of fall asleep not long into stuff.
Yeah.
I cannot stay up to finish anything. My husband gives me a really hard time about that. But, this is going to sound silly. Sometimes on a really stressful day, I will go back and just watch like old episodes of Seinfeld.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't have to think.
We've had entire
That's self-care.
I'm like, I don't want to have to figure out the plot.
Yep.
Or try to remember what happens. Can we just watch a couple episodes of Seinfeld and call it a day? And that is really, it's uplifting. I get a good laugh. I've seen them all so many times over, but it never gets old.
That is a consistent theme with people. That everybody has, whether it's Seinfeld or Friends or Modern Family, whatever show. There's shows that people just keep in the background, like it's like comfort.
Or go to. Yep.
I'll look at my husband and I'll say, "Is this a Seinfeld night?" And we're like, "Oh yeah," because we just don't want to have to think about it.
Yeah.
I also really enjoy just listening to music and having that as an outlet.
We have a musical guest coming, a music teacher coming on next week to
nice.
Tell her self-care testimonial and how, she uses music in a different way now because of some stuff she's going through. Yeah, so that's on next week's episode. So yeah,
music is a big deal though for all of us too.
Yeah. Cathy, what about you? Anything you and the boys have been watching?
Look, we're back on Cobra Kai because we never finished it.
Oh, I love it.
We're back on Cobra Kai. And then, Marty was all worried because it's the last season of it. And we'd already watched three of them. And Marty's like, I don't think, he was all worried. And we're like, just relax. It'll be all right. We started in at 4. We're good. We're good. We're back in. So we're finishing that series. Little bit into American Idol, which means I've left The Voice, which is I always cheat on The Voice with American Idol. Jay, I'm sorry.
Well, I was flipping back and forth last night. I was going back and forth to both, but Ida was very good last night.
He likes all. Jay is just all the shows, but he's really good about The Voice, and then I really try to get into The Voice, and then I walk away from it. I'm just not faithful to it. Yeah.
So, Katie, I actually the movies are, that's why we talk about movies, because movies
Yeah.
are a big part of my self care, and I literally go to the theater every Friday night.
Oh, nice.
It's like it's a switch for me. Like it literally, like it changes my body to like drive to the theater. So this past Friday, I went and saw a movie called Death of a Unicorn, and I thought it was going to be pretty good. I'd not seen any previews, didn't know anything about it because it had Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega in it. So I thought, oh, it's going to be pretty good. But Cathy, I was a little bit disappointed. It was very weird, and to call it sci-fi is not even
Okay. I couldn't get you to go to Paddington that you didn't know anything about. But you go to the Unicorn movie with no
Yeah, but
background.
it had two actors that I liked their work, so I figured, well, I'll try that. But I've been on, Kathy, as you know, I've been on that documentary, the true story documentary kick here lately. So I watched the newest. It was on Hulu, the newest documentary about the Oklahoma City bombings, and I can't believe it was 30 years ago this month that happened.
Really?
1995. So
I remember where I was at work when I saw that.
Yep, it had new interviews and new information, and so that was very interesting to watch. One at the very beginning, it shows the date on the screen. I'm like, 30 years. It's literally April of 1995. I was shocked that it was that long ago.
We were shocked when that happened.
Oh yeah.
Well, I did fib. I did watch Mufasa. There was one other thing. I watched Mufasa.
Okay, that was pretty good. I kind of dug that. It didn't have as good a music as the original Lion King, but it was okay. You know what I mean?
It's not going to stay in your heart forever like the original, but it was good. They're really good on all of the colors, and the graphics are just amazing in these.
Yeah, the CGI is just it's so futuristic now. Yeah, it changes the. I mean, it kind of a good way in some ways.
You think it's real sometimes. You're like, this is real, and then you're like, it's not real.
Until the lion talks, and you're like, nah.
Yeah. I'm waiting for the movie stuff to come out that I'm going to go physically to the movies to see.
Well, you'll probably go see Thunderbolts, which is the Marvel. That's May 2nd.
And the Karate Kid, there's a Karate Kid one coming.
Yep, that's May or June.
I'm seeing that.
And then Superman's July.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. See, there you go. I'll get there to those, the big blockbusters.
And of course we have Murders in the Building, which will be probably sometime over the summer.
Did you see that they have new? Did you see? Did I send it to you? The new people.
I saw Renee Zellweger is one of the new ones.
I meant to send that to you, but you saw it.
I saw the Renee Zellweger one. Are there others?
I don't know the other two. Christoph Waltz.
Waltz. Oh yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And Logan Lerman.
Don't know him.
I'm gonna send it right to you. Have you seen Katie? Have you seen Only Murders in the Building?
No, I've heard about it.
Well, then
is that the one with Martin?
Short.
Short. Yes, I've been very interested to check it out.
What we're going to tell you is you need to put Friends on hold, okay? And you need to trust us on this one. What is
it on though? What is it on?
On Hulu.
Hulu.
Okay.
It was one of Hulu's original comedy series, like early on in Hulu.
How many series? How many? We've seen what? 4?
There's been 4 seasons so the next one coming out will be season 5.
But at first, Jay got me on it because when I don't know what to do, I'm like, Jay, what should I watch? Anyway, the first couple I was like, I don't know, and then he's like, hang in there, and then I fell in love with it. Like I want to hang out with them. I want to hang out with Steve Martin and Martin Short. They're funny.
this show has the best cast. Like there are
Yes.
big stars that pop in all everywhere. Each
And it's
season there's
hilarious.
new big stars that pop in. They're adding people. It's just it's so good. And I didn't think I was going to like it at first because it was murder mystery and comedy together, and I'm like, no. But as I watched it, I'm like, the comedy's light enough where it's not so they're not punching you in the face with the comedy.
Mhm.
But
And the
I'm
murder's light too. Everything's
yes,
light.
but I find myself trying to figure out who done it the whole time. That's what gets me. Meanwhile, I got all these stars that are popping into each episode.
But you might not want to watch it with your daughter. There's a lot of cussing.
But the dynamic between these two older gentlemen, Martin Short and Steve Martin,
Yeah.
and then Selena Gomez, is like it's so perfect. It
Well,
works
they've
so well.
always, the two of them have always had really great chemistry.
They're hilarious.
Hilarious.
You've got to watch it. You will thank us.
And their characters are what you would imagine they are in real life.
In real life.
100%. Right? They probably are.
Yep.
Well, I'll have to check it out.
Between
So
that
we
and
have
Ted
me back to
Lasso.
report out. I
Yeah.
know that Cathy got me on Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Did you
That's
do it?
coming out.
Did you watch
I
That's
did
coming
it.
out soon,
Did
too.
it. I'm like, I did it thanks to you, Cathy. Turned me on to Stranger Things.
So I would say you already did Outer Banks, right? Did you do Outer Banks?
Ted Lasso, for
Oh
sure.
my God, Ted Lasso.
I haven't done that one.
Best show ever. Like, ever.
I would say watch Murders first, Ted Lasso second, and then I like Outer Banks.
I haven't seen any of those.
Well, look, we got you busy for the rest of the year.
I know. Well, that's where I have to like introduce it in doses. My husband's like, "Are you getting me hooked on this?" I said, "Yeah,
Yes.
we're committing."
I can tell you with Ted Lasso, you're going to feel every emotion in
my
every
God,
episode.
yeah.
It's the
Coming
perfect,
back
like,
too for another
it's the
season.
perfect snapshot of like people and how they interact and how they deal with issues, and it could not have been done, but yet it's got so much like love and character and like just I mean, I watch more TV than most people, and it's not even close. It's the best show I've ever seen,
Well,
like ever.
I have heard that across the board that it's really outstanding.
Yeah. There you go.
All right.
You
So I
got
got
All
some
right,
homework.
I appreciate you, everyone, joining us this week for Easter Short Talk. I hope to see you next time, guys, and take care.
Thank you.